Hi everyone, this is my first official YouTube video. So I wanted to make a video about the copper IUD and my personal experience with it. And I hope that my experience with it might give a little more alleviation and also information for others who might be interested in the IUD option for birth control. So I'm currently 2 weeks post-op from the copper IUD insertion. And if you guys want me to continue to do it 1 monthly or yearly or anything like that, let me know in the comments. And also, let me know if you have any other questions in the comments below. This is kind of weird to do a video. I'm not used to it. Also, I just came back from working out. I look like a hot mess, and I wanted to show off my cool new tattoo, so made my own tank top. And also I'm not wearing any makeup, so we'll see the real reality of all this. Anyways, let's continue to the video. So for me, I was on the pill form of birth control for about 2.5 years. And I took about 3 different prescriptions. I was on my last one was ortho-tricycline, which was a combination pill. And my other 2 previous ones were basically estrogen only. I've had really miserable experiences with the pill. I've experienced during that duration of 2.5 years, about 25 pounds of weight gain. I had the side effect of me being weirdly nauseous to the point where I wouldn't want to eat anything. And then 2 hours later, I would be starving, like I haven't eaten in days. So I would be ravished. I would eat and eat and eat, and nothing would suffice. It would only be very particular things. And usually those things were pretty unhealthy, or it was really, this appetite, swings of appetite were very unmanageable and very hard to deal with. And it didn't matter how much I traded prescription, I still had that side effect. And I also had some fluctuation with acne, but some I had no acne and some I just had a little bit, so that wasn't too bad. With periods, it made it kind of heavy at first, but it usually would lighten them every time. So that was actually kind of nice to deal with because I have pretty heavy periods. So for the ladies out there who have very heavy periods, that was something with the pill form, that was something to consider at that time. So I had also just a lot of weight gain, a lot of mood changes. I have depression and been diagnosed with that. So I felt like more on the estrogen ones, it would really affect my mood. So I'd become very easily irritable, or kind of harder to manage my mood swings, or harder to manage my downfall with depression. So it was just overall with the pill very hard to manage a lot of symptoms. So I said after 3 different ways of trying in 2.5, it was enough. And I really wish somebody told me, I also shouldn't be on birth control pills. I have a very big history of blood clot in my family. So that was not a good thing for me to be on, regardless. Even though it's a little bit distant in my family, it's still never a good idea. If you have that in your family, and even if it's a grandparent or an aunt or uncle, or even if it's a little bit distant, you should definitely talk to your OBGYN or your doctor or whoever prescribes that and see if birth control pills are the best option. And also, I have to take anti-seizure medication. I have a very rare kind of migraines, And unfortunately, with the pill or other forms of birth control, it can sometimes worsen your migraines because of the hormones, and also can cancel the effects of the medicine. So unfortunately, just birth control was no longer, the pill was no longer an option. So I decided for a year I was no longer going to be on birth control. So I decided for a year I was only going to use condoms if I was going to have sex. And yes, that was my form of birth control for about a year and a few months. And I recently got into a relationship, so I decided that I really needed to seriously look into other viable options. But knowing with my history, medical history, and also my sensitivity clearly to hormones, I didn't know what to look at. At first, I considered the rod, but upon looking at reviews, it really didn't seem like a good option. It seemed like a lot of people really didn't like it, and it was referred to as the devil stick. So I didn't like the sound of that. And also, it had quite a bit of hormones in it. Even though it was progesterone, I just didn't want hormones in general, or the lowest amount possible. So I considered the IUD. I was looking at the Marina, Skyla, Kalina, and the Paragard. And I believe there's another option, but I can't quite recall the name. So Marina was one of the bigger IUDs and had probably one of the most hormones, so they recommended that if you had children before, and I decided that was probably not the best option for me. And then I was looking at the Skyla, which was a little smaller IUD and had the less hormones in it. But reading through the reviews, I had some mixed reviews, people saying they loved it, or it took a few months of their body adjusting to it, or they absolutely hated it and they had months and months of periods or months and months of dysregulation with their body. And I just kind of sounded like the same symptoms I was going through the birth control, and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to put my body through that again. And I looked through the Paragard, the copper IUD, and talked to my OBGYN. I haven't had children, so she said it is a bit bigger and it could cause more cramping and more bleeding since it is a bit bigger, and it would take some time for my uterus to adjust to it. So I was a little skeptical and wasn't sure what to choose. So it took a little bit of about 2 weeks of thinking and really looking through a lot of different reviews and videos to really narrow down what I wanted. And ultimately, I chose the copper IUD because it's non-hormonal. And I thought that would be the best bet for me. I already have pretty heavy periods, so I figured it wouldn't be too bad, or I could handle having heavier periods or crampier periods. So, yeah. So my biggest nerve-wracking thing was the insertion. And I think you should definitely have a little appointment with your OBGYN beforehand, or talk to your doctor beforehand and see your options. They recommend having 800 milligrams of ibuprofen about an hour before. She prescribed me mesotropine. Sorry, I don't think I pronounced that right, but it was a medicine to soften my cervix. So if it is your first time getting an IUD or you haven't had children, I would really recommend getting that. It should make the insertion a lot easier for you. So with taking that, when I took it, you experience very light cramping, and they sometimes say you may experience a little bit of bleeding beforehand. Also, I have quite a bit of, I was just very nervous. I read a lot of reviews of it was the worst pain of my life and it was awful and how terribly painful it was. And me, who hasn't had children or hasn't quite experienced that pain, I really didn't know what I was going to get into. And I was incredibly nervous. So if you have a lot of anxiety or you're anxiety prone or you think you might need something to relax beforehand, I would suggest talking to your OBGYN or your doctor about maybe prescribing you a very, very small dose of an anti-anxiety medication for the procedure only that day. I honestly think having that, it was only 0.5 of a milligram of an anti-anxiety medication. I've never taken an anti-anxiety medication, but as soon as I took it, about 30 minutes later, I took it about an hour before my procedure, I could feel I was a little more tired and not so hyper-focused on the pain and the procedure and the stress of the whole thing. So I think it really helped me in general. And you being relaxed and not tensed up will make the procedure probably 100 times better for yourself and whoever's inserting it. So that's probably my recommendations. So when I went in, I had my appointment at 2:20 in the afternoon. I waited, unfortunately, about 25 minutes. So I was revved up, very a bit anxiety filled, but lessened with that medication. And finally, when it happened, she came in. She put the metal scapula or frenel, I don't know the medical term. And so, very normal feeling. And I would say probably the first pain is probably the most painful one. It would be probably I would describe it as a sharp, intense cramp that lasts about 15 seconds, 10-15. That's it. And then after that, you have some mild to moderate, few other cramps that last about 30 more seconds, and then it's over. It's done. You have about pain for about 1 to 2 minutes. And the most painful part is about 10 to 15 seconds. And my gauge on pain, I would say it's about, honestly, 4 or 5. It was not as terrible as everyone made it to seem. It was very manageable. It was very bearable. And it was just a little shocking at first. And it's a little surprising, but it wasn't awful. It was a little painful, but it wasn't to the extent where I was going to pass out or to the extent where I wanted to cry. It was just kind of like a very, very sharp, intense cramp. And then it was done. Like that. So, after the procedure, I went home, a few hours later, took another 800 milligram, had my heating pad, had some ice cream, come on, non-dairy, so, I had some chocolate to relax for the evening. So the next day, I relaxed and repeat the thing. So I would probably recommend the next few days to have some dosage of ibuprofen. Oh my gosh, you guys, there's a hawk. That was so beautiful. Sorry. That was so beautiful. Just repeat that pattern for probably the next day or two. And unfortunately, my period was late, and I was hoping I would have my period the same time I'd had the procedure. I've heard that's really helped with some people's pain because during your period, your cervix is naturally dilated. So I would recommend getting your IUD inserted during that time. So mine, that was my plan, but unfortunately it came 3 days after the insertion. So my first period with the insertion was very interesting. I'm very used to having heavy periods and that, so I was having heavier periods for sure. I was going through the thick night ones every few hours and going through super tampons every 3 to 4 hours for the first 3 to 4 days. And I was having, I would say probably severe cramping, probably the first 2 to 3 days. And the other days, it was probably moderate cramping. And I had a longer period. It was about 7 days. And my typical one before the IUD was 4 to 5. So I'm hoping it will take a few months to readjust. But I think if you already have pretty bad periods or you've already had some heavy cramping or experience and you're able to just take some ibuprofen, Tylenol, or Midol, or what I recommend is evening primrose oil. It really helps with cramp as well if you want to do a more natural sense to it. Those are really great alternatives. And a heating pad, I think this has been the greatest birth control ever. Not even kidding. The only side effect besides heavy cramping and heavier periods is I think I have a little bit of acne, which is kind of deep, and I usually never have acne. So I don't know if it's just stress related or it's maybe my body getting used to this foreign object. But we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated. I'm hoping it won't get any worse. Yeah, I think it with intercourse, it wasn't painful. I didn't feel it at all. It was wonderful to have that option. I really recommend it. Honestly, it's a long-term solution if that's what you like. And I'm currently trying to lose weight and doing that, and I have not seen any ups or downs fluctuating in that area. It has not changed my mood. It has not affected my appetite. It has not given me any of those hormonal crazy side effects I used to have. No, think I've really enjoyed it. Besides that, let me know if you've had any experiences with the IUD or copper IUD. Let me know if you have any questions. So I'd be glad to answer them. So, bye.